my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic damn day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be replicating Mark Robin's 4-4-1-1 Coventry City tactics. Now I will say this, if this video can hit 20 likes, I will go ahead and release the formation that they used for majority of last season, obviously with Gyökeres up front, as well as the start of this season, the 3-4-1-2 system, more or less. Obviously the back three system. So if, like I say, if this video can hit 20 likes, I will definitely look to release that one sometime next week, of course. So yes, guys, we are going to look at how you can replicate the 4-4-1-1 Coventry City tactics. Okay, so looking at the formation, obviously it is a 4-4-1-1 as it says there in the top corner. But as you will also see, I've somewhat changed and altered a few positions, namely the two fullbacks are now wingbacks. This does get them higher up the field. It involves them a lot more in the attacking outlets, which is what you're trying to do. And then as well as obviously pushing them higher, I've made the wider midfielders, the left and the right midfielder, more central. And this obviously gets them more centrally involved, having them interchanged in certain positions with the likes of O'Hara. And you kind of do want them to have that more central pinpoint approach to their attacking outlets. So essentially it is one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two wing backs, two central midfielders, one attacking midfielder, two wider midfielders, and then of course one striker. Now moving on to the tactics, I think that the best tactical vision that suits this side going forward is wing play. Now I will say this, I am not a Coventry City fan, I don't watch every single game, I'm not an avid watcher of them. All the games that I did watch, which was the extended highlights for a lot of them, and I did obviously watch the Leicester City game last night, I did my research based off of that. So I think the best tactical vision that suits this side going forward is wing play. Of course, they like to work the ball into those wider channels, namely with their wing backs. That's also why they are placed as wing backs and not full backs, because you want them very, very, very involved in the attacking outlet of the side. Moving on to the defense though, the counter pressing I was so impressed with the counter pressing, the ability for them just to effortlessly run and try and close down angles and lanes, and it caused a lot of issues for Leicester City, which you can definitely say for this season at least, in the championship, they've been very, very comfortable in possession. Obviously, they did lose a player to a red card, and that more or less swung the game in favor of Coventry. And it also allowed Coventry to dominate the ball because they just created so many overloads. And you'll see with the offensive instructions or the tactics, they do tend to try and flood as many players forward to try and get them high up in those attacking areas to try and either win the ball back and transition very effectively, or just to try and implement that very aggressive counter press that they obviously tend to do more times than not. As for the team width, however, it is set to 45, so it's a very balanced approach. And obviously with the wing backs in play, they will naturally look to try and get high up the field, which does help with your depth, and we'll discuss that soon enough. But again, you have a very balanced approach. So yes, you will have balls being swung into the box, but more so you'll have bodies in and around those wider areas of the field to try and prevent that, as well as your two central midfielders. They'll also look to try and come back a bit more, help out your centre backs who are very capable in the air, I will say this. And the goalkeeper, he has his moments of brilliance where he can look to try and claim the ball if it is obviously put too close to him, but he's not the best at doing so more times than not. As for the depth, it is set to 55, a mid block you could say. Now on the offensive side of things, with the counter pressing, you want to try and get bodies high up the field, and with the wing backs in play and their instructions as well, they'll more naturally look to try and have a higher level to their natural positioning on the field. So in terms of like what you want from your two central midfielders as well as your two centre backs, they will look to try and play that mid block, try and not get exposed with any balls over the top or through balls, and try and pick up their runners as best as they can. So I think the depth for this side being at 55, you can obviously raise it to around 65, but I wouldn't advise you go any higher than that, because that will definitely expose your team. And I will say this, because you are playing wingbacks, the more attacking version of the fullback, especially with this game, you can be somewhat hyper exposed on the counter. So make sure that when in possession, you're looking after the ball, you're not giving it away, you're not making silly errors at the back, and then you should be fine. But I will say, with the gameplay and everything, make sure you are looking after the ball. Moving on to the offense now, the build-up play, I've gone with the balanced approach. So I did see quite a few times in the game last night with Leicester, they were quite happy to go down the channels, down the wider areas of the field with the long ball, as well as having that quick passing movement in the central areas of the pitch. Pass and move into the likes of Palmer or Ellis Sims on the left-hand side, or even Sakamoto. Very good, very quick, swift movements. The runs in behind were very important, and so on. The chance creation should be set to forward runs. Now, what this essentially does is in the game, it pushes players forward high up the field. Your two number, I want to say number sixes, but they aren't number sixes. Your natural central midfielders in Sheaf and his midfield partner. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I'll butcher it as per always. They also got nice and high up the field, looking to try and apply and pile on as much pressure that they could to the Leicester City backline, their midfield, that when they did lose the ball, there were a lot of players high up the field to implement that counter press and win the ball back very quickly. And you did see it quite a few times. Palmer, I was very impressed with his work rate. Whenever he lost the ball, he would just make sure that he would pick up his man, close the lane, close the angles, win the ball back, and then try and make something happen. So for the forward runs, you'll also naturally have more players making those runs in behind. Mainly your striker, whether it's Godin or Wright or Ellis Sims up front, it doesn't really matter. They'll look to naturally try and take up those areas of the pitch just in behind the opposition's defense, playing off the shoulder in certain moments. And then, of course, you have the likes of O'Hara, or is it O'Hara? Either way, your number 10. And, of course, your two wider players that will also look to try and exploit the opposition. As for the width, it is set to 75. Now, this is more so to do with the fact that you are playing with wing-backs, having them in those wider channels. More naturally, your wider midfielders have a more central role, linking up a bit more with the number 10, almost playing as two wider attacking midfielders in certain moments. But more so, the width is set to 75 to try and create as much space for your two central midfielders to try and get on the ball, work with it, progress it forward, and as well as have more space for your players to try and run into. As for players in the box, I've set it to 7. Now, I don't know if this is just swayed because of the fact that Leicester City only had 10 men on the field for quite a large portion of the game, so they did try and commit a lot of players into the box and get them forward. But there were quite a few players on the box more times than not. So I would say it ranges between the 7 that I have here and probably the 6. The likes of O'Hare, you want him in the box attacking the balls, attacking cutback opportunities. He scored 2 fantastic goals in the game last night. And more so, you also want to have at least one of your wider players in and around that attacking area as well. And then maybe even one of your wing backs in the attacking third. As for corners and free kicks, as per always, I have set it to 4. Now moving on to the instructions for your players, starting off at the back with the goalkeeper Collins. Now he is set to a saving on cross is set to balance, right? So like I said earlier, he is fairly decent at having the ability to claim the ball, but there are times where he doesn't do it so effectively. So that's why I think balanced is probably best. The saving outside of the box is set to a sweeper keeper. Now in possession, you need this guy, especially if your wing backs do tend to bomb forward and more or less vacate those wide areas, leaving it up to the goalkeeper to make the correct play more times than not. So having a sweeper keeper in play is effective. You are playing a mid block, so you don't necessarily need one, but I've more or less gone with the sweeper keeper because I think Collins, with the ball at his feet, replicates a more modern day goalkeeper, which is a sweeper keeper. As for your two centre backs, now you'll see here Thomas is set to his base set of instructions, whereas the likes of Kitching, he is set to a slightly alterated version of that, but the defensive position is set to step up. He does get nice and close to his man or the attacking player of the opposition. He does get nice and close, make sure that they're very uncomfortable when they do have the ball, when they have their back towards the centre backs. He's going to make it very uncomfortable, very aggressive towards those players, which is why the step up approach for the defensive positioning is set to be on for him. Onto your fullbacks now, the likes of Bidwell and the other man, Van Ewick, I think that's how you pronounce it. But both of them are set to the same set of instructions. Join the attack, of course, and the run type is set to a mix attacks. Now, more times than not, because they do hold the wider positions naturally, they will look to make those overlapping runs. But every now and then, I did see both the wing backs sometimes come inside a bit more, have a bit more of an attacking route more inward towards the goal, linking up a bit more with the central midfielders in certain moments. Normal interceptions are set to be on in case you didn't see that. And then, of course, the defensive positioning is set to step up, being very aggressive, very imposing towards their opposition player, and making it very uneasy for them to get what they want down either flank. As you can see here, for your right wing back, set to join the attack, normal inceptions, run type is set to balance or mixed, and then of course step up. Into the midfield now, we've got the likes of Captain Sheaf. Now, it was very weird because obviously there was a change and Alan came on for, I think it's Essels, I think. And basically this side became a bit more attacking, right? And I have seen quite a few of the extended highlights, like I said earlier, where that was a more natural change, and then that side would try and attack a bit more. So as for the likes of Sheaf, right, a natural DM, so you want him to try and take up more of a defensive area of the pitch. So in order to try and get him to do so, I've gone with him to stay back while attacking, collecting the ball off of the goalkeeper or the centre backs in certain moments, and then progressing it forward. Staying on the edge of the box though. Now this will allow him to try and take up a bit more of an outside approach, rotating possession, working into those wide areas of the pitch, trying to work something a bit better for his teammates in and around the attacking third. The interceptions are set to normal, keeping him nice and composed when obviously you are being counter-attacked or just attacked in general. You don't want him to be too aggressive with it, stepping out, causing holes in your defense. You need at least one calm head in the central areas of the pitch to try and make sure that he is taking up the correct position to try and stop anything of the offensive build-up that they can, right? Because obviously, like I will continue to say this, but with wing-backs, they aren't very well known for their defensive outlet, especially in FC24. So you do need to have a bit more of a defensive prowess in your central areas of the pitch, which is exactly what Sheaf will provide for the team. As for the defensive positioning, it's set to cover the wing. Now this works hand in hand with your wing backs not always coming back. So he will try and drift into those wider right areas to try and pick up the runners or the men in those wider areas to try and prevent those crosses. And then for the positioning freedom, now obviously if this game worked correctly like it did in FIFA 23 with the instructions, I would tell him to drop between the defenders when attacking, right? So you'll have a bit more of a back three type system forming, but you can't do that because they've taken it out of the damn game. But for the positioning freedom, I've set him to free roam. Now this will still allow him to not essentially drop between the defenders, but show for the ball in little pockets of space in and around the defensive third to try and get on the ball as much as possible. As for his midfield counterpart, like I said earlier, he was replaced by Alan when they tried to go a bit more attacking. But for his more so instructions, he was told to be a bit more of a box-to-box player, so you did see him get slightly higher up the field, but at the same time, he was also very in tune with helping the likes of Sheaf with the build-up play going forward. So that's why I've gone with the balanced attack for his attacking support. The support on crosses is also set to a balanced approach. So sometimes getting into the box, helping the likes of O'Hare and Palmer and Sakamoto and whoever in the box. Other times looking to rotate the ball with the likes of Sheaf in and around the attacking third, obviously working it into those wide areas, trying to get a better opportunity for his teammates. Now this is where things slightly alter. You want him to be a bit more aggressive. Obviously, he does take up a bit more of a higher position. This helps with the counter-pressing measures that you will be looking to try and implement, and more so, he does a very effective job. As for the defensive positioning, just like with Sheaf, he will look to try and cover the left-hand side, drift into those wide areas, pick up the runners, pick up the men, try and prevent those crosses, especially if the likes of Bidwell doesn't come back and help out on the defensive side of things. Just like with the defense, he'll also look to try and drift into those wide areas, looking to try and link up a bit more with Palmer and Bidwell. Also looking to try and draw certain players out of position, opening up a bit more space in the central areas for O'Hara. Palmer also drifts inside a bit more, so more so you want him to try and take up a bit more of a wider position. Moving on to O'Hara, goddamn, I've mispronounced his name 50% of the time. But anyway, he was very, very, very impressive for Coventry against Leicester last night. So his instructions, I would say, are come back on defense, looking to try and link up a bit more with your two central midfielders. The support on crosses is set to a balanced approach. So yes, he was getting into the box, being an absolute nuisance when he was in and around the attacking third, but also having the ability to pick up those slightly deeper roles or deeper spaces in and around that attacking third, potentially drawing players out of position, which is exactly why I've also gone with him to have a free roam role, drifting wide, interchanging with Palmer in certain moments or Sakamoto, but basically the coach said, listen, go do your thing, express yourself, press in those wider areas, press nice and high up. And for the third goal, that inevitably obviously killed the game late on, it was O'Hara and I can't remember who else it was, but they were pressing very high in that wide right channel. And obviously they won the ball back and it led to the O'Hara goal. So for the free roam role, you want him popping up in the little half spaces, drawing players out of position, being able to express himself on on the offensive side of things. And then finally, for the interceptions, just with the counter-pressing measures that you are looking to try and implement, I've set it to aggressive. Now, onto your left midfielder, Palmer, and it was also Ella Sims. They have got a very different role compared to the right-hand side. So for the defensive support, Palmer wasn't always coming back and helping out on the defensive side of things. He could definitely do so, but more so hanging up the field a bit more, being a bit more of an out there ball when required. And then, just like I said earlier, he did choose to come inside, interchange positions with O'Hara, or O'Hara, and obviously opening up a bit more space for your number 6/number 8, your central midfielders to try and also operate in those wider channels, and of course opening up a lot of space for Bidwell to try and operate as well. So he would come inside a bit more, get off shots from his right foot. The support runs, I've set it to a balanced approach, so yes, you can look to get him behind or come short, or maybe even be a bit more of a physical target man, and you want to try and incorporate all of that with this position. And then for the interceptions, it's set to aggressive, and then for the support on crosses, I've told him to get into the box for the crosses, right? So trying to latch onto those cutbacks or crossing opportunities that will inevitably be fired into the box from your wingbacks. Moving on to Sakamoto now, he is told to come back on defense, looking to have a bit more of a defensive prowess to him, of course, playing as a wingback and now being shifted higher up the field at one point in his career. I was very impressed with him, by the way. I was very, very impressed. So his work rate is very, very good, which is also why the defensive support being set to come back on defense makes so much sense. The chance creation is set to free roam, so he had a slightly differing role. He would try and drift into those wider channels every now and then, more so than what Palmer would do, which is why the free roam role best suits him, obviously popping up in little half spaces in and around the opposition box as well. And then for the support runs, just like with Palmer, it's also set to a balanced approach, so having him get in behind sometimes or come short, or be a bit more of a physical target man, link up a bit more with the midfield. That is what you're trying to do with this role right here. And then for the interceptions, it's set to aggressive. And then the supports on crosses, taking up a bit more of a natural winger type mold. It's set to balance. So sometimes getting into the box, other times looking to hang on the edge of the area and try and supply for the teammates. Now, finally, on to your striker. So obviously it was Godin in the game last night versus Leicester City, but more so it's a more natural physical number 9 type role. So for the striker, just in general, stay central is important, obviously taking up more of that central role, being a bit more of a focal point in the offense going forward, having the ability to link up very effectively, but at the same time, the attacking runs have gone with a mixed approach. So sometimes making those runs in behind, which they'll also naturally try and do with the forward run set to be on, or sometimes having the ability to back into the opposition, hold them off a bit more, be a bit more physical with them, adding a nice element to the game, having the likes of your attacking midfielders link up with the striker more physically higher up the field. The interceptions is set to aggressive, and then finally the defensive support is set to stay forward, so he will more naturally be the out there ball going forward. So yes, people, that is what I would do for Mark Robins' 4-4-1-1 Coventry City tactics. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, please smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you are new. Like, the next goal is obviously 4,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane to me. It's like mind-blowing that almost 4,000 people are subscribed to my channel. Like, that's crazy. And then also, out of 10, the rating for this system, I would give it an 8.5. It has potential to be a 9.5, but the only reason I've somewhat downgraded it is because it's so defensively weak at times. Maybe with a better team or higher rated players, it can like be in full effect, and you can definitely show off your attacking presence and make sure you retain the ball as much as possible. But the reality is that when you do lose the ball, you are somewhat weak at the back, especially with your wing backs being pressed so high and wide, and not always having the ability to come back in time. But yes, guys, we're going to end off the video right here, right now. If you have enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. And of course, as per always, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.